The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Sister Speak. You're here with me, Mariam.
And me, Lamisa.
And we also have Fareen, but she'll be joining us shortly. On today's topic, we'll be talking about personal development. It is the 6th month of the year, so we thought it'd be a good time to exercise introspection and think about how much we've developed and how much we want to develop in the future. But before we do that, Lamisa, what is our show about?
Our show is a platform for Muslim women and girls to voice their opinions about various different topics. We just want to say that all opinions and views are our own. And we respect all other similar or opposing views and opinions.
Yes, thank you for that. So if you want to join the discussion, how can they do that?
They can text or WhatsApp in on 07779 481822. You can also call in on 01582 481822. I think we're also live on Facebook, so if you want to comment underneath, you can do that. And we are also on Instagram, so if you want to send us a DM at Sister Speak, please do.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, and I just want to say we have had Lamisa back after a very long time, so a very warm welcome back to Sister Speak.
Thank
We're
you,
so
thank
happy
you.
to have you back. And I must say, Dr. Lamisa, alhamdulillah, mashallah, she has now graduated as a doctor, and for those who have been following the show, has known her career journey in terms of studying medicine, so we're so proud of her for reaching her objective of becoming a doctor, alhamdulillah. Okay, so the first segment we're going to be doing is Thought of the Week. So this is a segment where we talk about something insightful, a reflection, or something that we've just been thinking about. It could be a personal anecdote. And I'm going to start off with Fareen, who has just joined us now. Thank you, Fareen, for joining the show. What is your Thought of the Week?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Is my mic on? Yeah. My thought of the week, I've been thinking a lot about, I think I talked about this with Lamisa last time. I was just thinking a lot about criticism and how it can actually affect you. But wait, let me just try my criticism. When you give it, that's one thing. But when you receive it, I think you should be really careful with what advice you're taking from other people. And I think the more you grow up, I always say this sentence, I feel like the more I'm like maturing and stuff like that, I think about these things. The more advice you take from other people, the more you think about it in a negative way, the more it's going to hurt you. So you should really, I'm like trying to now pick and choose who I'm taking advice from. And social media is definitely one thing that you should never look through comments, never look through any Islamic knowledge. Is good if you look it up on the internet, but actually go to the source and see if this is actually something that you are following and is within Islam and stuff like that. And obviously your parents, family, friends, people, it's when you give criticism, it should be with the right intention. That's the one thing. So if it comes from a bad place and you can sense it, or maybe you're not comfortable with that kind of criticism, I think you should not follow it. And it's something that I've been doing. I've been trying to stop thinking about what other people are thinking about me. So when I enter a room, I don't care anymore, right? Do you remember I used to say I care a lot about what people say and stuff like that? I'm in a point in my life where I don't care. I only take criticism from my sister, which is one thing that I think we can all relate to. My sister, my family, and my closest friends, but not anyone from outside my circle. Anyone who I think doesn't have the right intention. They might do, and it's always good to listen and be respectful when you're listening to it, but you don't have to take it to heart. That's my thought of the week.
Well, it's really good that you reflected on other shows where you recognize that you take people's opinions quite seriously, and that influences and impacts you, and now you've come to a stage where you recognize you have to filter those out, and I think it's a very important skill, and it comes with time as well. I think personally for me, the kind of advice I take it from like yourself. I take it from my teachers, my Islamic teachers, from my family, my friends, but also people who are not in my circle but have achieved certain things that I want to achieve, and who I know they are experts in their fields and they know better than me. And sometimes it's difficult because they provide you constructive criticism, but it's sometimes difficult to absorb that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to react straight away, but later on it could give you hindsight. And so I think it's really important to be self-aware, which we're talking about in our show today, but also to recognize, okay, where do I sit in this kind of advice, and how can this be impactful for me? And it's okay to not feel that this advice is relevant to me right now, but it could be relevant to you too later on. So I think that it could be meaning in every type of advice, but of course is how we share that advice and how it's said is really important, because sometimes when you're transmitting a message, it could be communicated in a wrongful manner, although it could be in essence correct. And I think that comes from a sense of emotional intelligence, being really considerate of how that message is transmitted. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Lamisa, what do you think?
I would have to agree. I think it is something that comes with time, where you tend to kind of filter through what people are saying and try and think about what lesson might be best to take on for you. I think there are also times and experiences, and I think you'll tend to know when those are, when you do want to just take on board everything that everyone's saying. But that's in certain contexts, and I feel like in other contexts maybe what everyone is saying might not be as important. For example, if we're talking about like social media and things like that, everyone's opinions is not necessarily needing to have an impact on your life. But yeah, I think it takes time to be able to learn that skill.
I think as you go through life, you just kind of develop that understanding, because you meet a lot of people who have different perspectives to you, and they have a lot of different experiences. And I think it's a good thing, alhamdulillah, that we are exposed to that. A lot of people have a very homogenous way of thinking because they haven't been exposed to different perspectives, and I don't think we should be afraid for people to differ from us, because that cultivates healthy understanding of the world. So I think it's really important to put yourself in those situations, not to just shy away from that.
I think, Mariam, just to comment on what you were saying earlier as well, in terms of when we give advice and when we give improvements to people, that is really a skill. It takes a certain type of person to be able to convey constructive criticism in a way that doesn't make the other person feel small or ridiculed or anything like that, but also makes them realise that maybe this is the area where they can improve. And I think it's always good to kind of reflect on the way that you teach and the way that you might be able to impart lessons on someone, so that in the future you can do it in a constructive way.
I think one of the things that I read online, which I think is quite true, is a lot of people, it doesn't really matter much what you say, it's how you make that person feel. And I think if you reflect on your own experiences, sometimes you'll remember people for how they made you feel as opposed to what they said. So I think it's really important. We're emotional creatures, we should be, and we're social creatures, so we should be able to exercise emotional intelligence in all aspects. So thank you, Farine. That was a very good, pertinent reminder. Lamisa, what is your thought of the week? It's been so long.
It has been a really, really long time. I think there's been so many things that have been going on recently, and I think I just have loads and loads of thoughts. But the biggest one that has come to mind recently is opportunity, and that we should try and take every opportunity that comes our way. Sometimes it might be really difficult to do that, but if you see something that's out there and you have nothing in your way that's stopping you from trying to obtain that thing, then I guess my thing is, why not? Why not try and go for it and see where it takes you? At this moment in time, everything might not be aligned, but you never know, like 2 or 3 years down in the future, after you've taken that opportunity, things might be completely different. So I feel like whatever opportunity comes our way, we should try and go for it, even if we have you don't necessarily need to have a plan in place for it to work out.
Do you want to unpack that a little bit? I feel like that's related to experience.
Yeah.
To elaborate on.
Think you want me to elaborate on? I can't necessarily elaborate now on specifics, but I feel like there are quite a few things that have come my way throughout life in general, and I haven't necessarily had a plan, or even at the moment, like I don't have a plan for my future, but if something were to come my way, I would try and go for it and see what role that might play in my future. You never know.
Yeah, just being open, I think that's the essence of what you're saying. I think that's how you learn, and I think we always said that to Farine as well as she was in sixth form. Take every opportunity, because you just don't know what that would provide for you, and it's also a way for you to test what works for you and what doesn't work for you. But I think another thing that we have to also recognize is our limits. So I wouldn't recommend people to go completely out of their comfort zone where they're drowning and they're not able to survive through that, because that will have a negative impact on them. However, I think that's why it really does derive from a sense of being self-aware, because you have to know how much you can tolerate. but also at the same time that doesn't justify you not going out your comfort zone. So there needs to be a balance, and in Arabic we call that mizan, and I think Islam really kind of advocates for that. So go out of your comfort zone, but don't go to the extent where you know you're going to drown. For some people they like that and they have adrenaline, but it is really person to person, and you should just know yourself. And I think you can build that resilience incrementally. It's not to say that you characterize yourself with that I'm a person that cannot tolerate going out of my comfort zone. It's something that you can build, and I think a lot of areas in our character we can build on it so long as we acknowledge ourselves, and that's why we're doing the topic personal development today. So thank you, Lamisa, for that thought. I think my thought of the week is about the Hijjah, and we are going to be, inshallah, experiencing the 10 days. And I just wanted to kind of talk about how I want to cultivate a plan in place, because I feel like with Ramadan, we all kind of aspire to make sure that we can leverage the days as much as possible. But I feel like for me personally, the Hijjah is not something that I used to take that seriously, which wasn't a positive thing. So for me, I think the next 10 days, I really want to incorporate more acts of worship. I want to incorporate more acts of worship. I want to be able to do Qiyam, so the night prayer, and try to read the Quran more, and just really try to feel that Ramadan vibe that I felt, replicate it in any way, shape or form. Because there is a hadith, and the Prophet ﷺ said that there are no days in which righteous deeds are more beloved to Allah than in these 10 days. That's from Abu Dawud. So we can understand the significance of these 10 days, and we should take it very seriously. And also take a time to ask forgiveness from everyone, and also forgive yourself. I think that's really important as well, where you have fallen short, because that's the only way you can grow as well. So for me, I think just finding a regimen really to make sure that my days are structured and I can take the best out of it. And I feel like that would be a catalyst for the next half of the year, because quite neatly, half the year's gone now. So I think for me that would just help me to plan out the next half, really. Does anyone have any further thoughts?
We don't have any thoughts. We're just, I think we're all aspiring to, make the most out of this last 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. And just like you, Mariam, really read more Quran and acts of worship.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think also just make it easy for yourself. I think, of course, in Ramadan, there's a lot in place, especially in terms of work. People are quite more aware of it, but with Dhul Hijjah, they may not be. So even communicating that with your employers, it could just spark a conversation and actually can show people that this is what we believe in. And actually, a lot of Abrahamic religions are quite similar, so they were able to find similarities, and that's a good way to kind of teach people about Islam in a way that's familiar to them. So I definitely think have those conversations just to make it easy for yourself. Allah wants ease for you, so make it easy for yourself. Okay, so the next part that I'm going to do is play my favorite game, especially Grand Game, which I just got on the table. The first question I think is quite self-reflective, and the question is, what part of your present will you miss the most? And I'm going to ask Lamisa.
I think youth is something that I will probably miss the most when I'm older. I think that's a common thing actually that people tend to face, is once they grow older they tend to miss their youth. But I think it's not necessarily the age or the number, more so the experiences that I'm having now. I think that's what I will be missing. That kind of being at home, being with my parents, living together with my siblings, doing our kind of family things together, but then also the whole thing of being young where you're able to go out with your friends and have your life with your friends as well, and then you're able to come back into your work, and not having responsibility. As much as, on paper I very much enjoy having responsibility and I like leading and all of that stuff, I think as a human and as a person there's something that comes with like freedom and not having responsibility to worry about the more adult things in life that people have to worry about. And so I think that's something that I will miss when I'm older, and so in this present time I am just trying to enjoy every single moment. And I think like when we look back at when we were younger as well, like, I miss being a child too a lot of the time. It was a lot more fun.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about bills.
Yeah, anything.
Electricity, anything like that. I kind of agree with you, Lamisa. I think it's the same for me. Even though I'm still living at home, I'm gonna miss, being with my siblings. Or, I don't know, when my sister gets married and she moves out, because I'm so used to being with my family and everything. So I agree with you.
I think, but my mum did say something which I thought was pretty, quite cool of her to say. Because when I asked, we were going through their old photos, and there was one where she was really, really young. And I was like, you probably missed that time right now looking back. And she's like, no, I enjoyed it back then, and I'm enjoying life right now, because the things I can do at 45, 46, I wouldn't have been able to do at, 25, 26. So she said that at every stage that you're at, try and enjoy where you are, because it comes with its own set of things that you wouldn't have been able to do before.
100%. I think it's cumulative, right? Your experiences allow you to appreciate what you have now, but also it allows you to reflect on what you've experienced before. And I think those things, like your mother said, that it only happens in a set time in your life, and Allah decrees that in that way.
Exactly.
For me personally, I think, because I have a niece now, I'm just going to really miss her baby stage, and I can hold her in my arms, and she's teething right now, so her gummy little smile. I think that for me is something that I really miss, because it's just, I understand now when you go to family gatherings and they say, I remember you were a baby. Now I'm going to say the same to my niece. So I'm really enjoying auntyhood, I guess. And I resonate with both of you as well. I think living at home, living with my family, and also the ability to actually invest so much time on my personal development, spiritually, in terms of education, in terms of just socializing, that freedom that I have, that scope I have, I think I'm extremely privileged to be able to just choose what I want to do without thinking that there's going to be repercussions, or there's someone that's reliant or dependent on me, or I'm responsible for someone else. And I think this is the time we take advantage for it. But also I think that privilege comes with responsibility as well, because how you use your time, you're going to be accountable in front of Allah. And so are you using it to disadvantage people or disadvantage the people around you, or use it to serve the community? And that can manifest in so many different ways, even having the intention of becoming educated so you can support someone in the future, or even just having halal earnings is really important. So really framing what you spend your time on is really important. So I think that is the answer to that question. My next question is, and I think this is a good segue for it, the last question is, who do you appreciate more as you get older?
You want to go first?
You can go first.
I'll say my parents, but especially my dad. I feel like when I was younger, I never really saw, you just put on a mask. Like, you don't know, you just say your dad's gone to work, but you don't know what he's doing. I didn't even know what my dad did for work when I was young. I was just at home, doing my things, playing with my sister and stuff like that. But then the older I get, the more stories he tells me. And I always talk about all it's so fun, and so, I don't know how to say it, so, I think about it a lot after my dad tells me his experience, coming and all the struggles that he's been through, and it just makes me appreciate him more because he did that for us. And I'll say my dad, and I think now everything I'm doing is obviously for my parents, and I just want to give back to them before, I don't know, anything happens. I just want to give back from them, and for them to be really proud that through their struggles, I'm now, I don't have any struggles because they had all the struggles, if that makes sense. So, I would say my dad, especially my parents, just make it like that.
Lamisa?
My answer's not going to be any different from Kareem's. Mine is also my parents, because I feel like just the more you grow older, the more you realise the sacrifice that they've put in. And I think everything that I have been able to achieve up until now is all because of what they've been able to push me to do.
I think so. I think it's a kind of an immigrant response to you.
Yeah.
Where our parents have really sacrificed everything just so that we can have the choices that we have today. And I think I saw this post on social media that when we take our parents to small things like the park or somewhere that we find interesting, that's their first time living. And I think that's such Farine, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I literally see this quote every single time, and I send it to my parents. Obviously, they have no such a cold response; they just reacted to the message. But I was talking about it with my sister, and we were like, I don't know where I took my mom. I think it was like an arcade where you play like bowling, and I think it was her first time going bowling. And she was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I've been bowling so many times. So I was like. I was, I don't know, 15 when I first went bowling, and my mom went like in the last 3 weeks, I think we went. And it's like we just have to be patient with them, you know. They're literally adapting to this world. Every single time that we experience something new, they were there for us, and we should do the same for them.
I agree. Emisa, do you have any thoughts?
I think. Why am I drawing a blank? I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've been on radio.
It's okay.
I think it's true. I think the thing that we have to realise is that a lot of the things our parents would have done, perhaps, and I don't know if this is a negative way of thinking about it, but it is something that might be true, is the fact that they have sacrificed their youth and their dreams. A lot of us don't see our parents as what they could have been or the life that they would have had. But if we look at that, then we kind of see the types of people that they would have been. And a lot of them have kind of sacrificed that. And I think that's what we need to remember when we maybe lose patience towards them or things like that, is because, you know, these two people have done so much for us, and yet we can't even bear them 3 seconds, you know, when maybe they don't get a bit of technology or something like that. So yeah,
It's very true. I think we all can resonate with that. I think it's a consistent theme within our show, and I think for me personally, I think for my parents specifically, how my dad has sacrificed everything for his siblings, and I think a lot of this is true to a lot of families, so that my granddad could live a very comfortable life where he didn't need to work from the age of 30 or 40, and my dad was taking care of everyone. And my mum was the same. She sacrificed everything. She didn't pursue going to a education beyond, I think, GCSEs. So she was in this country, so she can look after her siblings, so she can help my grandma raise all her siblings. And I think it's true what Nemisa say, that if their circumstances was different, they probably would have. My mum wanted to be a midwife actually, and she wasn't able to pursue that because she had responsibility for family, and she wanted to support my dad in terms of making sure that his siblings are all comfortable. And I think a lot of the times we forget that they spent the most prime years of their life dedicated to that, and now like we just discussed, that now we're in this element of our life where we choose how we want to develop, and we're having a whole show on development. That's probably inconceivable for them at that time because all they thought about was survival. So I think it's just really important to appreciate and have gratitude towards our parents in that sense. So yeah, I think that kind of makes me a bit emotional actually, because you just really think about how much they have done to make sure that you're comfortable, because life could have been very different, and we can see around the world what's happening, and we could have been there. It's just a geographic, difference. Allah could have placed us in that scenario, and we would have had a very different set of problems. So alhamdulillah, I think we should be really grateful, especially in the next 10 days. We talked about increasing our ibadah, but also just making our parents happy, and that could be in any different way. But that's not to say people who do have difficulties with their parents, and every relationship is different. But I think what it really boils down to is do what you can, and Allah's watching your sincerity. So if you feel that it's difficult for you to converse because you don't feel heard from your parents, or they just never understood your point of view, then just make their life easier. Even if they don't acknowledge it, Allah's watching. And I think it's really important to take the onus on ourselves, even if people don't treat us well, that we should treat everyone well, because that's what we're going to be held accountable. We all go to our graves alone, and we're all going to be accountable for that. So I think one of the things that was mentioned in our show before, if everyone fulfills their responsibilities, everyone receives their rights. So I think that's kind of my reflection on that question. The next question I have, very quickly before we end this half, is do you need to outgrow your environment? And that floor is open, so whoever wants to answer can answer that.
Outgrow my environment. I think I'm actually really comfortable in my environment. I don't feel the need to go out of my comfort zone. And I don't know, when I go into another environment, I don't know, I have this thing where I just pick and choose who I know I'm gonna be comfortable with, and that's the way of outgrowing my environment. But I have a really small circle, and I think it starts with my sister. Literally, my sister and my brothers. That's my little environment, and I really like being really, really private in within that. And obviously, friends and stuff like that. But I think for that environment, I'll always be comfortable in, and I don't think I want to outgrow my environment. I think I'm really content in life. Obviously, if it comes and there's someone that I really feel like there is gonna be good, then yes. But not right now.
No, that's a fair point. We all know when we want to outgrow our environments, and we all know when we should just stay comfortable. Lemisa, what's your thoughts?
I think for me, I'm in a transition period right now, so I think very quickly I'll be in a new environment and see what that's like, and transitioning out of student life and into like working life. That's going to be interesting to see, and I think I am looking forward to it and the challenges that it comes with. But I think that's because I think mindset-wise as a person, I am quite ready to put myself in new environments, and so I'm looking forward to it from that perspective, I guess. We'll see.
That's really good. I think a lot of people are afraid of change. I think I'm definitely one of those people. But I think as time goes on, you kind of muster the courage and you plunge yourself into these situations. And I think also when we think about change, when I used to think about change, I used to always think it's an individual thing, but actually you have a support network to help you to adjust to that change. I think that's really, really important, whether it's your friends, your families, and also finding mentorship. I think we will be talking about in the next half the value of having a mentor and having someone to guide you along the way, because you are inexperienced and you are prone to making mistakes. But we will be discussing that in the next half. Do join us, and we'll be talking about personal development. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to Sister Speak. You're here with me, Mariam. Also joined in the show with me is Lemisa, Alia and Fareen. And the first half we just shared our reflections, personal anecdotes. It was quite a reflective session, and by now we are going to move to our main topic, which is quite interlinked. It's personal development. As we mentioned, this is the 6th month of the year, so we have gone through half of the year, and with Dhul Hijjah coming up, we think it's a very pertinent topic to be talking about. So I'm just going to dive right into it, and I'm going to start off with Lemisa. How would you define personal development in your own words?
I think personal development is growth. It's you kind of learning about yourself, learning about your strengths, your weaknesses, and also reflecting on all the experiences that you've had, and then trying to come up with kind of steps, I guess, in how to improve from that version of yourself. And it doesn't have to be a rigid thing. It can be a constant thing that happens all the time. A lot of people reflect at the end of every single day and think about maybe changes that they could have made. So yeah.
I think that's very accurate and captures very well what personal development is. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
I agree with I think it's self-development includes your environment as well. Don't look at me when I talk, you're going to make me laugh. I think it's your own personal development. I think as you grow, we always talk about this, as you grow, you develop individually, and also your environment and who you're choosing to be friends with, who you're choosing to surround yourself with, so that it's everything is included in that kind of self-development.
So what you're trying to say is there's different facets to personal development, and
Yeah.
environment is one that impacts it. Okay, so I think the next question I would like to ask, and Alia, I'm going to ask you this. What do you think personal development is in terms of your own experiences, and how do you feel that, have you seen a shift in your own life where you felt that has been a pivotal turn?
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a few pivotal turns in these short 18 years of my life. It's how would I define personal terms? I'm trying to think. I feel like personal development in terms of what I've done or like changed is mostly just acknowledging what I've done wrong, taking accountability for what I've done wrong, and trying to make it better from there. Like literally just trying to
Learn from it.
Yeah, learn from it. Trying to be a better person. I think that's all it is to it. It's not really sitting there and crying about it. It's more of you have to keep being optimistic. That's it, and then move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so important to have that like you're saying, that self-reflection.
Yeah.
I understand when other people do you wrong, you can do the same to them.
Oh,
and you
yeah,
can
yeah,
also
100%.
you can obviously, we always say this is really cliche to say, but you always learn from your mistakes, and it's a fact. It's not like you can just, I don't know how you say it, like oversee it. You can't oversee it.
I think it's true. I think personal development has many elements to it, and I think it's about goal setting as well. Because once you have self-awareness, you can only improve when you have a structured plan in place, or at least even it doesn't need to necessarily look like a project plan or like a productivity type of plan. But it just means that you have a ambition, or you have a sense where you feel that you fall short in certain areas and you want to improve on them, or you know that there's certain areas that you're good at and you want to refine them and hone them in. So I think those areas really help you to understand yourself, but then also understand where you can plunge in terms of thrive in different environments. In the talking of self-awareness, I think this is really an important part of personal development because it all starts within. I want to ask you, Lenisa, what are some tools or practices that can help people improve their self-awareness? Because I think we talked a lot about self-awareness in previous shows, so I actually want to talk about some practical tools that we can share with people to help them.
I think reflection is probably one of the biggest ones. Whatever experience you have, whether that be in work, like whatever environment, whether that be in work or in your home life or with your friends and things like that, reflecting is a really good way of looking at what happened and then thinking about how you can change that for the future, or maybe what you want to change for the future if there is anything. And I think it's a tool that people should quite regularly do, even if it's not pen to paper type of writing it down, but more so in your head. If there was something that felt unsettling to you in the moment, why did it feel that way? And is there anything that you can do to change it, or things like that. I feel like reflecting is a good way to make sure that we do develop ourselves, and it's a good tool.
I agree. Farine, do you have any other tools that you can use? I think reflection is the first stage, but what other stages is there to that?
I'll say talking with your close family members. I think when I said in my thought of the week, I was talking about criticism and who you take advice from. I feel like that's one of the things, because you changing impacts your whole environment. It impacts your family, it impacts your friends. And I think it's important for you to be comfortable enough to talk about, this is what's going on with me, and, that's literally what reflecting is, talking about it with someone. And I think, for example, for me, I would talk about it with my sister. I think she's my, I just tell her everything. So I think she'll be like, I don't know about you, but sisters are very blunt when they say, because you're just sisters, So I think it's a good way to reflect, and then you're self-aware because they're telling you the truth. I feel like my sister wouldn't lie when I talk to her about it. So yeah, that would be one of my ways. I think I'll just talk with my sister. What about you, Alia?
Yeah, I talk to my sisters too, actually. I feel like my sisters aren't as blunt. I feel like when I talk to some of my friends, they're a lot more blunt and a lot more harsh. But my sisters are very, very empathetic people. But at the same time, they're very...
cold.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't even say cold. I think they're just very, very... Reserved. Like, yeah, in terms of their advice. They're very... I don't think what you did was right. But move from it. Do better next time. But in terms of what tool would I say would be good for, and I mean physically, in terms of especially for reflection, especially for taking advice and stuff, I think it's so important to, even if you're not noting down how you feel, at least note down or jot down or type somewhere what your goals are in terms of how you can do better tomorrow or the next day or in 2 years or in 5 years. Just get it down somewhere so that I feel like because when you write something, you remember it more. And it's so important to you have to look towards the future. Obviously, don't be too engaged in the future. Don't be too invested in it. But kind of have the idea of tomorrow, I want to be like this tomorrow. I want to be better.
That's really interesting. I think having a tangible way to look at what your goals are. But I think the essence of that is accountability. So having reflection is important. But equally, you need to hold yourself accountable. But also having people around you to hold accountable. And I think that's what Farine was saying. In terms of identifying yourself, in terms of your strengths and weaknesses, what kind of methods can you do to actually really intrinsically look inwards? Because it's quite easy to kind of have these reflections and think about yourself in a very ambiguous way. But actually, if you really want to think about how do I identify what I'm good at, how do I measure that? Lemisa, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting because it depends on what your goals might be. If you're asking about how to measure it specifically, it might be, for example, if your goal is something very specifically academically, then you can see how you might be able to measure that. If you have goals in kind of other more abstract settings, it might be a bit more difficult. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a question I'm still trying to find the answer to be honest.
Personal strengths and weaknesses?
Personal strengths and weaknesses I think I know very well. But in terms of how someone might actually measure it or might actually see tangible results from it, if there is a way to do that. There might not be a way to do that. It might be in 10, 15 years' time you kind of see how your environment's changed, and that might be the result of that.
Yeah, I think that's very true. But as you mentioned, you have ways or methods in terms of how you identify your own personal strengths and weaknesses. And I think it would be different to different personalities. Yeah. But for you specifically, how does that look like?
I don't know, because I don't think I sit there and necessarily think specifically about, or like I haven't given myself that time of day to sit there and specifically think about what my strengths and weaknesses are. But I think as I've had different experiences and gone through different parts of life, I've been able to identify this is one of my strengths and this is one of my weaknesses. So I think my thing is I identify it as I go through things, and then I decide that I'm going to change on it or work on it or improve it even more, cultivate it even more. So I've never actually taken pen to paper and written anything down, but I think within myself I've decided this is how I'm going to go about it. And I think for someone like me, it's just I need to have a plan in place mentally, and then I can go for it.
I agree. I think I'm quite similar to you. I think based on feedback I get and how I feel in that situation, if I feel that I'm thriving, then I think, okay, this is a skill that I have and I need to build on it. And if there's aspects where I feel uncomfortable and I'm finding it challenging or difficult, then I know, okay, this is something that I need to improve. So it really does, it's indicative through experiences. But Fareen, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think of Lamisa's point, I agree with that. I feel like you should get out of your comfort zone, and then you can measure what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I think it started with me, for example, me joining radio. I didn't know that, I could like speak in front of people, or me literally doing a STEM degree, because I always thought I was going to do something socially related, like law, history and stuff like that. And then I joined STEM. I didn't even know I was good at maths before I started my STEM degree. So I think it's really just getting out of your comfort zone. Like Lamisa said, having a lot of experiences, and then from there you can measure what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I feel like you think that you have some weaknesses, but they're actually not. Like I thought I was bad at maths. Now that I'm doing it, it's not a strength, obviously. I'm still not that good at it.
You're still developing it.
Yeah, literally.
But you're better at it than you thought you were.
I always thought that I was really bad at it, and I thought it was a weakness, but it actually isn't.
Until you actually start doing it, you're like, oh.
Yeah, it's all about how you see it and what you do with what you think your weakness is.
Yeah. Even taking that to like an emotional or social level, like you might think, oh, like I'm not a social person, until you start socializing, and then you're like, okay, never mind, I'm actually really good at this. Let me continue. Like I think a good example of that is you, 100%. I remember when Fareed first came, and she was like, yeah, I just don't talk to many people. Like I'm just quite shy. Do you remember like when she first came, like last year of high school, she didn't want to talk to anyone, and then we got into college, and she started being more friendly. But now look at you. You know what I mean? Like you're networking.
You have to start getting out of your comfort zone. Talking with people, it is really hard, especially because when I came here, I was like, oh my god, how am I going to talk with these people? But it's just really getting out of your comfort zone. And then I feel like the people around you, there's always going to be someone that's going to try to belittle you.
Yeah, 100%.
That's part of life. Like you just have to, and there's always going to be people they're gonna support you. They're gonna stay with you through that whole process. So it's just who you surround yourself with and how you can. Work with the strengths that you have.
I think one other thing to comment on that you said as well, with regards to weaknesses, and they might not actually be weaknesses, is to maybe identify how much of that particular quality it takes for it to be a weakness rather than a strength, if that makes sense. So you might end up taking your weaknesses, and actually if you have them in moderation, they might actually be one of your strengths or one of your good qualities. So look at yourself not just in the binary of strengths and weaknesses, but rather what things kind of help me when I have it in this particular situation and what things don't. And that might be a good place to start.
I agree. I think having a holistic mindset is really important. And I think this is a good segue for the next question, which is the role of having mindsets in terms of personal development. So Lamisa, I wanted to ask you, how does a growth mindset differ from a fixed mindset? I'll just repeat that. So how does a growth mindset differ from a fixed mindset?
I think with a mindset that's kind of geared more towards developing yourself as a person, you're in a position where you're able to take on new challenges. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my voice today.
That's okay.
I'm sounding like a robot. You're more geared to take on different experiences that come your way. And even if you have a negative experience, I think you're able to try and think about that in a positive light, or maybe try and think about what things you can learn from that. So with that way, you're almost taking that, learning from it, taking it to your next experience where you can do the same thing. Whereas if you're in a fixed mindset, I think it becomes really difficult for you to be able to have new experiences and actually learn from those. But as a person as well, to excel. Having a mindset where you're always ready to kind of accept new things and go with the flow, I think is always good, because it just means you're able to learn a lot more.
I think that's really important because you are able to evolve and be fluid.
And you don't limit yourself as well.
I think limiting beliefs is a huge aspect.
It's a massive thing. I think, unfortunately, actually, maybe a lot of kids in our community have that issue where they limit the possibilities or limit the kind of targets that they set for themselves, and actually there's so much more that they could achieve. I think mindset is a huge part of that, and confidence is a huge part of that.
Yeah,
the more you think that something out there is attainable for me, it becomes a lot more attainable. I don't want to be a motivational speaker.
That's what we need.
I 100% believe that it's very on brand. But I 100% believe that if you see something and you're kind of half about it, where you're like, I could go for it, but actually no, like, why would someone like me get that position, or why would someone like me end up there? Don't stop yourself. Think, why couldn't someone like me end up there, type of thing. Think about, like you said, your strengths, your skills, and then apply for it and go for it, because why not? Worst that happens is it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think that shift in mindset is really important, because if we have limited beliefs, we impede our own success. And I think labeling ourselves or characterizing ourselves, we have to understand, where does this derive from? What evidence do you have that you're not a person that's good at communicating? You have to communicate every single day. So I think what Lamisa is saying is, it kind of captures a lot of things that we've discussed today, in terms of taking every opportunity to ensure that we're emotionally intelligent and being self-aware, so we can plunge into new opportunities. But being rigid also doesn't allow us to negotiate with ourselves or with others, or communicate effectively. I think one of the things that I want to talk about as well, in terms of having a growth mindset, is just having that idea of learning to take constructive feedback. And I think we talked about in the first half of the show, but I believe a part of growth mindset is taking constructive feedback. So I think we didn't talk too heavily on it, and I think I'm going to ask Alia, because she wasn't here in the first half. How would you, what advice would you give to people in terms of receiving feedback, especially when you're very young? I think it's very different. When you're in school, you get feedback all the time from academics. But when you go through life, people are a little bit more reluctant. So how do you kind of negotiate that as well? Because you are working as well outside of your studies, and how was that difference?
In terms of taking feedback from people, I think it's very important to acknowledge how you feel taking that criticism, and also to kind of acknowledge in your head that sometimes the advice that people are giving you, you don't always have to follow it. As bad as it sounds, you don't always have to follow that advice. Do you understand? Like, for example, I think I read somewhere that if they're not the type of person that you want to be, or that you want to be around, then you have to be very, very cautious or aware of that. For example, someone might look at you and say, I don't think that the way you're doing this is very beneficial, and I think that you should live your life this way. And you have to kind of, see how are they living their life. Is this how I want to live? And if that's not, then you're not obliged to take that advice. But I do think you have a responsibility to take it with a pinch of salt. With a pinch of salt, like with no harsh feelings, because a lot of people, they don't actually mean to upset you. They just have a lot of people, they have a harsh way of thinking and speaking in general, like a lot of people do. And especially if you're younger, for like the younger audience, if you're quite young and someone's giving you a piece of advice that you don't necessarily agree with, consult with your family and say, look, like, this person has said this about me and about myself. What do you think about it? Do you think this is, I think it just comes back to reflection. You have to talk to people, and that's how you're going to grow, and that's how you're going to be a better person.
That's really
important. And I think it's that kind of, critical thinking about what people are saying, and I know it's a skill that people try and, with it tries to get taught in school and things like that, but actually it's a skill that we use in everyday life all the time. But even if you're young, it doesn't mean that you don't have that critical thinking ability. A lot of young people do. So think about advice that's always being given to you. Think about it. Am I rejecting the advice because my feelings are hurt, or am I rejecting it because actually it's not applicable to me? And then you can decide from those whether you want to take it or not, if that makes sense.
No, 100%.
I think in the field that I'm in up until now, even amongst our peers, we have to be quite harsh to each other when we're talking about, the way we're communicating with other people, for example, for our exams and stuff like that. And sometimes a lot of my peers are very harsh when they give feedback. And I'm not the same, because I always try and, when I teach, I try and make sure that I do it in a way that instills confidence in another person. But other people are quite harsh. And sometimes I came away from that just feeling like completely terrible and being like, what on earth? But at the same time, you kind of look back and think, what was that person trying to get across, despite their message being, so harshly worded? What was it that they were trying to say? And from there, I was able to kind of take the takeaway learning points, being like, actually, it's not that this person doesn't like me, or that they're trying to show that they know more than me, or to show that they're superior. Rather, this is what they thought I needed to improve on, and this is what I'm going to improve on in the future. So I think it's a way of trying to look at what people are saying and actually just getting the succinct main points from it, and then trying to maybe take away some of the emotions if you feel like they're unnecessary. Obviously, if someone's flat out rude to you, don't accept that.
Don't tolerate it.
But sometimes things can come across sounding a bit harsh, and maybe you just need to dig a little bit deeper to try and think about what the good takeaway points from that is.
Yeah.
I agree. I think one of the main points that we kind of just discussed is just how that message is transmitted, and you as a recipient, it's up to you how you receive that. And I think that's another skill as well, how we transmit message. But that's the whole entire conversation. We are in the last 5 minutes, and I do want to quickly talk about mentorship, because I think that's really crucial as you grow older, having someone to guide you and kind of give you that constructive feedback as well as you go along. Does anyone here have any mentors?
No.
No?
I've had one.
Okay,
I've helped you.
That's really good. So, do you want to just quickly discuss that? Because I think it's really important for people to know that a lot of the people that we see that are successful in terms of their careers all have a coach or all have mentors. And I think it's something that is not really discussed quite widely, but it's really important to have someone that's holding you accountable and guiding you along the way. So, Lemisa, can you
Definitely
tell us about your
I
experience?
have two main mentors I can think about. One is a mentor in the abstract sense, and I would say that's my school. I feel like the attitudes that they instilled in us from a very young age, very much of, go and try whatever you can do. If you want something done, go and try and do it for yourself. And make sure that you're organised, on time. If you have a route that you want to follow down, make sure you know at every step of the way what you need and plan ahead for it. I think those types of skills and kind of lessons, they really taught early on with regards to how our attitude should be in a professional setting and in a life setting. So I do see my school as kind of a mentor in that sense. And then I had a specific mentor kind of outside of school who really helped me with medicine in general, and interviews and things like that, and more so helped me to realise that there wasn't anything I was lacking in that sense, because I really thought I didn't have a lot of the credentials that I needed, and it was really good because he was there and he was like, actually a lot of these things that you do that might not be directly related to medicine are really useful skills that you could say that you have, and I think that was really helpful, and I'm still in contact with him today. So yeah, it's really good to have someone who you kind of see a bit of yourself in as well, to see that they've already got there, and so you can follow those paths and those footsteps and kind of get there yourself, or maybe make your own path. But it's always good to have someone who you can contact when you need help.
That's really important. I think I have a mentor as well in terms of because I'm in the civic space. I think it's really important for me to recognise how do I get to certain milestones that I want to achieve. But just on that point, Lemisa, for a lot of people, they might think, okay, it's great to have a mentor, but how do I find that? And people are in different careers. So what would you say as a medicine student? How did you find your mentor?
I think mentors come from so many different places that you might not even expect. My mentor is my dad's friend. And so that's where that came from. A lot of people find their mentor in terms of being ex-alumni from school, for example. You might end up going to an event. There are a lot of organisations actually in Luton right now, career organisations that try and help push people in that particular field, I would say go to them, and you might find someone there that can be your mentor. Those organisations themselves are mentoring younger students. Ask your school, if you're like 15, 16, don't know what to do, a lot of your teachers might have friends in different fields. Ask your teachers, and that way you can get in contact with people who are already in the field and who can try and guide you. LinkedIn is a really good place as well, I've heard. You can send out messages on there and try and connect with someone who might see something in you and might want to help you as well. So mentors can come from all different places, and if you want to find someone who's in your field, go out and look for them.
I think people have that hesitation that people are unwilling to give their time, especially if they're really successful. But
absolutely not.
I
think it's absolutely on the contrary. Like, people are very willing to talk and very willing to give a helping hand, especially when they know kind of the struggles you might have been through, because they may have been through the same ones. And I think especially in Luton, it's a community full of people who really do want to help each other grow. So I would say if you're currently in sixth form or things like that, and you're trying to find someone, just send a message, go for it, because there's nothing that's stopping you.
I think it's really great advice, especially for young people. Ask your teachers, because they went through the whole education system to become your teacher, and they went to university with people in other careers. So I think really leverage the people around you, and I think the main overarching point is, if you don't ask, you won't get. And I think that was Luminous catchphrase before. So I think it's really important to remind everyone of that. Even for me personally, I think I've leveraged it through LinkedIn. Just looking at, before I was really interested in higher education, so I used to add so many people in the higher education sector. Then I became interested in the civic space, in the civil service space, and I started to add loads of people, and I'd message people. And that's not to say that everyone's going to respond to you, but it's by volume. At some point, someone will respond to you, and you just have to leverage that opportunity. And it's interesting because I remember I had a conversation with someone on LinkedIn who was just starting out her civil service career, and she was more than happy to give a call to me. And then later on now, a couple of years later, we're in the same group chat for civil service. So I think it's really important to recognise identify the opportunities that you have around you, but also take the onus on yourself, because if you don't actually take steps to get to the certain milestone, then you won't really achieve it. And just don't be hesitant. Limiting beliefs is something that also plays a role. If you don't ask, you don't get. We are coming to the end of the show. I did have a quick question. I don't know if anyone can answer this very quickly. We talked a lot about personal development, but in a couple of seconds, Alia, could you just round up, what are barriers do you think that impedes people from personal development?
Lack of accountability.
Okay, and what can they do about that?
Talk to people around you about what you've done.
Okay, that's and Fareen?
I don't know. I can't do it in a couple of seconds. I don't know. I always keep going back. I feel like it's this family. Anyone who has the right intentions for you, you'll develop it through it. So I'll always go back to family. I'll say my shout out to my sister.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
That's okay.
Thank you for your contributions today, and we'll see you in the next time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We stream our daily broadcast on inspirefm.org. You'll find all our daily updates on our social media at Inspire FM Luton.